Hello and welcome to this Dewey tutorial. Today we're going to walk through how to access data via API using the deweydatapy library. We're going to work with similar web data today. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, just wanted to give an overview of what we'll be working on in this tutorial today. First, we'll give an overview of the necessary items needed to move through with this tutorial in the Getting Started section. Next, we'll talk about installing the deweydatapy library, gathering the API key and product path from the Dewey platform, and then an overview of the methods available within the deweydatapy library. Finally, we'll download the data and merge it into one file. So to get started, we're going to assume a few things. First, that you have Python installed on your machine. Next, that you have an IDE ready to use Python. And then today we're going to make use of the Jupyter Notebook extension in VS Code. If all of this is a little bit confusing, be sure to research these items and then get this ready to go, and you can move forward with this tutorial. Now let's go ahead and move over to VS Code. Now that we're in VS Code, we have a few things to review. First, we have an empty folder. This is where we're gonna store the data. We have a notebook here where we're going to write our code. So the first thing we have to do is install the library. And this can be copy and pasted from our GitHub repository, which we'll link in the description below. So this is a simple command to go ahead and install the deweydatapy library to your environment. So now that we've installed the library, we need to import it. So we can go ahead and do that with import deweydatapy as DDP. Let's go ahead and run this. Now that we've imported the library, we can move over to the platform to go ahead and get our product path and API key. Let's jump over there now. Now that we're logged into Dewey, we can go ahead and navigate to the product that we're going to be working with today. In this case, we're working with SimilarWeb. Once we're on the SimilarWeb page, we can navigate to the product that we're going to be working with. Let's work with mobile app installs and engagements. From the product page, we have a number of options. First, we can review the profile, the data preview, and the table structure. And once we decide that this is the product that we want to work with, we can move to Get Subscribe. Here, we'll be able to work with the API to be able to download these programmatically to our machine. Now that we've determined our subscription type is API, let's go ahead and select a connection. Since we don't have one, we'll hit the plus here. This now provides us a key. It's important that you keep this key in a safe place, as you'll only see it once, and you'll need to build a new connection if you hope to get a new one. So let's go and copy this and move back to VS Code to save it to our notebook. Now that we're back in VS Code, let's go ahead and save our API key in a variable called API key underscore. We'll go ahead and copy and paste it in from the Dewey platform. Now let's jump back to the platform to finish up the subscription process. Now that we're back on the Dewey platform, let's go and finalize this connection. So let's hit Create Connection. Now we can go ahead and move forward with the subscription. So let's hit Subscribe. So now that we've got the product paths here through our subscription, we can go ahead and copy the path for the data endpoint, which is right here. Now that we've hit the copy button, let's move back to VS Code to download the files to our machine. Okay, so we're back in VS Code, and I've added a few comments here for clarity. Let's go ahead and paste in the product path that we got from the Dewey platform and store it in the variable ppsw, or product path SimilarWeb. So now that we've run this cell, we can go ahead and move forward with using the deweydatapy library to download the files programmatically from Dewey Data. So the first thing we're going to do is use the getMeta method from the deweydatapy library to understand a little bit of information about the data that we're going to download. So we can use the ddp.getMeta method, and we're going to pass in our API key and our product path as arguments into there. We'll go ahead and print the meta so that we can see the information in the notebook. So we can see here that there's a total of 12 files. The total size of the files is about 250 megabytes, and a few other pieces of information below as well. So now that we know this, we can go ahead and move forward with the data download. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and get the file list. And this can be done with the getFileList method. So again, we're going to be using our API key as an argument and our product path as an argument. In this case, we know that there's no start or end dates to parse on. This can be shown here. Date partition column is none. So we know our data can't be split up that way. In some instances, such as for advan, this is a great way to split up the data and get the most recent or go back historically and grab a subsection of the data set. In this case, we're going to go ahead and download the 12 files available. And so let's go ahead and get the file list and store it in the variable files list data frame. And now that we've got the file list, we can see that there's a total of 1 page with 12 files, which meets the expectation that we got from our meta call earlier here. Now that we have the list, we can go ahead and download the files programmatically from this list. So to do this, we'll go ahead and use the download files method from the library. We're going to pass in files.df, which we saved earlier here, and then we'll set our relative file path as data, and that's this folder here. Next, we'll say skip exist equals true. In this case, we don't have any files saved in data, but in the instance where you've already downloaded some files and you just want the latest information that isn't on your machine, this is a great way to just get the most recent information. So let's go ahead and run this. As you can see, the files are being downloaded programmatically here. So let's go and check back in once this is finished running. Now you can see we have all the files downloaded to our local machine, and they're saved in the file data. So let's go to import pandas to go ahead and review one of the files that we have saved. Now that we've installed the library, we can go ahead and read in the CSV file and then check the top 10 rows of this file. Great, so it looks like it loaded in correctly. And this can be confirmed for the first file stored in our file data. Now that we have all the files saved on our machine, we can go ahead and combine them into one single file. So first, let's import OS. Next, we can set our folder path as data. Next, we'll iterate through to get a list of the files saved in our folder path data. Then we'll initialize an empty list to store the data frames. Now we'll write a for loop to iterate through each of the lists or each of the files in the list, and then read each CSV into the data frame. We'll then append each data frame to this list. Finally, we'll use the concat method to go ahead and combine all the data frames in this list into one single data frame, df final. So let's go ahead and run this now. We can go ahead and check the shape of the final data frame to be sure that it includes all the rows necessary. It looks like it does. So this should match what's on the Dewey data platform. Finally, let's go ahead and save this to a single CSV file so that we can bring this out of Python, potentially to a new environment, or just so we don't have to run this code chunk again. Let's go ahead and run it now. Next, let's read in our final file to double check that everything works correctly. And now we can check the shape of the data frame as we read in our combined data to the single df_sw variable. And looks like everything's working well. Now that we can see everything's working properly, let's go ahead and load in the first 10 rows. Perfect. So this is how you can combine the files that you download programmatically from Dewey into a single file for use. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Be sure to check out the description for links to the community and more. Also, feel free to email info@dewey.io for more information or questions.